So as we move into the late stage rehab, what we have been doing to this point is working on the individual links in the chain. So now what we want to do is start to connect those links into one functional unit and prepare the athlete for return to sport. One of my favorite exercises is as we get into phase 3. This is, I will do a forehand and a backhand type exercise with an elastic band. And the reason why I like to do, this is very similar to a prone T exercise, but I like to do this in standing because we're incorporating the lower extremities and the trunk into this activity. So in the forehand, I want to make sure that the athlete is getting a lot of scapular retraction and then coming across into crossbody adduction. And then the opposite way would be scapular retraction with the and emphasizing retraction of the scapula at the very end of the range of motion.
And I think that's an important part to bring up, given that we are addressing the entire kinetic chain. So if you can start to work efficiently and start to train control distally as we're moving the upper extremity, now again, we're kind of linking it all together and not just doing a supine or prone exercise where you can work on the stability that you just gained in some of the previous exercises.
So this is a good exercise for throwing athletes, and I do this with a lot of my shoulder patients as well. So here what we're doing, it's horizontal abduction with external rotation. So again, we're incorporating the lower extremities and the trunk into scapular retraction and then shoulder external rotation all at once. This is a great exercise to prepare our throwers. Moving on to incorporating the lower extremities and the trunk, I like this trunk rotation exercise with the pulley system. And we'll do it both ways, so it doesn't matter whether they're right-handed or left-handed. We're really just looking to incorporate the abdominal muscles and trunk rotation as well as weight shifting from one leg to the other.
And I think watching Luke do that, you can see if he didn't have the adequate hip rotation, that you could see how much just from that movement, how could it affect up the chain.
And then we'll go into downward chops. So here what I'm having him do is reach up behind him and then emphasize getting down and weight shifting to that to his right leg. So again, we're working on the entire kinetic chain, shoulders, trunk, and lower extremity. And then we can do the same thing with upward chops. So he's loading his left leg and then shifting his weight to his right leg as he's working on trunk rotation and scapular retraction at the very end. Scapular retraction on his right shoulder and protraction on his left shoulder. As the patients get stronger with the isolated hip strengthening exercises, I like to incorporate a single leg deadlift into the program. Here we're working on the posterior chain, so really emphasizing getting that opposite leg up. And as he's kicking into moving upright, we're really working on the hamstrings and the hip extensors. As we start to prepare for return to throwing, the first thing I like to do is use a weighted ball and do a plyo ball toss. So here what we're doing is we're working on the stretch shortening cycle of the muscle, trying to get his arm into external rotation. He loads it in external rotation and then tosses the ball back to me. It's a great exercise for improving endurance as well as improving strength and seeing how irritable they are with this activity. If they're having pain or irritability, then I know that they're not really ready to return to throw. In order to work on the eccentric loading of the posterior muscles, so the posterior rotator cuff, the scapular muscles, and the back muscles, here I'm tossing the plyo ball over his shoulder, and he's catching the ball as he's coming down into mimicking that deceleration and follow-through phase. He can do this exercise on his own with a weighted ball where he just tosses the ball up in the air and catches it in that same position. But here we get, as I throw it in the air, it's loading his arm a little bit more. So when I incorporate manual resistance with these athletes, I like to mimic what they're going to be doing on the mound or in throwing. So here I have his landing leg or his stride leg on pushing against a Swiss ball, so it's an unstable surface. His opposite leg is in the air, so it's engaging his lower core and his trunk. And then we're doing alternating isometrics of abduction, external rotation, and then adduction, internal rotation with his arm at about 90 degrees. Then we can move into progressing to active elevation through the range. So here I'm working him concentrically, and now I'm going to push against him, and he's resisting the motion, and we're working his arm eccentrically, mimicking that deceleration and follow through phase. So concentric elevation, and then eccentric lowering as he's engaging his core by having his left leg elevated and his right leg is on that unstable ball.
And just to clarify, Brian, your resistance is primarily through your right hand.
Yes.
And your left hand is guiding.
A little bit, but I am providing some resistance to his deltoid. So he's really getting a full upper extremity workout there.